get on the live stream line?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad you came
Mike.
today. Take your mask off.
Yes, mask muffles your voice, so take it off, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for taking time on a Sunday afternoon to come out and join us today. And also, I'm happy that the listening audience is also here online. We are having an event today called Achieving Pesticide-Free Pajaro Valley. And here, okay. And CORA is a grassroots organization that was started with residents from the Watsonville area that want to see a Pajaro Valley without toxic pesticides.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And CORA stands for the Campaign for Organic and Regenerative Agriculture. That's what we want for the Pajaro Valley. So we have Adam Bolaños Scout to be our MC. He's a longtime environmental activist based in Watsonville, and he has many different roles that he plays. He's participated in numerous campaigns to protect land and water. He serves on the board of Watsonville Wetlands Watch. He's on the advisory committee of Regenerative, and he's on the executive committee for the Sierra Club. He is the manager for CORA in our ongoing pursuit of organic regenerative agriculture in the Pajaro Valley. So please welcome Adam Bolaños Scout.
Thank you, Dr. Ann, and to our live audience, we are working on improving the audio, so bear with us, and hopefully it'll improve quickly. Thank you all for coming today for this important event. I'm not going to talk for too long because we have a suite of great speakers who are really experts in this field. We'd like to hold questions till the end so we can keep it moving because we've got a lot of information to cover. I do want to thank all the organizations who co-sponsored the event today. I don't have the full list in front of me, but I know it includes Regenerative, Sierra Club, Nova Sutra, Staff of Life, Santa Cruz Climate Action Network, Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. I'm missing a few, and I'll revisit that list, and I'll make sure I'll thank everybody. If I'm forgetting you, please forgive me. So we have a suite of 6 great speakers. Our first speaker is Kathleen Kilpatrick. She is a nurse. She's worked on social and environmental health and justice issues for over 40 years. She was a family nurse practitioner student at the University of Washington. She also studied occupational and environmental health at a postgraduate level. She worked on 2 pesticide exposure assessments of children of farm workers and developed materials on keeping farm worker families safe. She spent her last 17 years before retirement as a school nurse in the Pajaro Valley Unified School District. And she's gotten very involved in pesticide work with the union, PBFT, Safe Ag, Safe Schools, and now CORA. So please welcome Kathleen Kilpatrick.
So now, is this okay? All right. So I'm going to give you the overhead view, the bird's eye view. Whoops.
A little closer to the mic, Kathleen.
Closer to the mic. Okay. So this is how our valley looks this is from Hazel Hill Road. It looks pretty much the same from Heckler's Path. It's our little watershed, our little biolocation.
We can't
So,
understand.
can you hear me?
Too close.
It's
Too close.
It's too close.
How about now?
Be comfortable.
I know. How about now?
That's
Okay. Okay, so who are we here for? Who are we representing? We want to be here for farm workers. They're the most exposed, often over a lifetime, to multiple chemicals. And we don't really know what the impacts are of those long-term exposures and those combined exposures of chemicals. They also take those chemicals home on their clothing and on their skin, and they can carry them on to the next generation through exposure of the fetus. So we also have an overlap with our agricultural communities. They have the same, surrounded by pesticides often, and when we think about pesticides around, don't just think about what comes through the air. Think about also what gets into our water and what gets into the dust that we take into our houses. Same thing, multiple chemicals, long-term, vulnerable groups include women, babies, kids, elders, our chronically ill residents, and we are disproportionately communities of color in the environmental justice issue. Consumers are an important ally. Everybody eats, and there's a growing market for organic foods, and consumers are increasingly concerned about the sustainability and the environmental justice of the foods they eat. And we also discovered that local organic food just tastes better. And the overarching issue of our times is our environment and contamination. One step back. Okay, contamination is out that. Okay, now my thing is frozen here. Something frozen. Okay, so we got, no, that's not doing it. Okay. Okay. Next time. Okay, so we have our air, our water, and our soil. We have our flora and our fauna. We wanted to preserve our beneficial species and our healthy soil. And if the soil is degenerated, that means we have decreased capacity to store carbon, plus other negative impacts. So let's back up and zoom out and look at the overhead view. Here's the state of California from high above. Those red squares, those are areas of heavy pesticide use. DPR does a very thorough job of keeping track of the different chemicals by weight, by name, by the crops and the acreage, and by how they're applied. And then another group, Tracking California, which is affiliated with the Department of Health, uploads that data and maps it. And the most recent data is from 2018. So let's look a little closer at our valley. This is most of Santa Cruz County, not over the Gilroy, but all those red squares down there in the lower side, that's the Pajaro Valley. You can see that most of the pesticide use in Santa Cruz County are used in the Pajaro Valley. This is all pesticides, and you can look at them by county, you can look by township, which is 7 square miles, or by section, which is about a square mile. This is a section map. Okay, so we're going to look at some different categories. I'm just showing chemicals here because they're the ones that are by weight most heavily used in the Pajaro Valley. And they're number 1 in the county, number 1 in the valley. And it's just a little surprising that they're so heavy because a lot of them are gases that are applied under plastic tarps. We're going to look at some of the other categories like toxic air contaminants. That's an overlapping group. We're going to have a lot of overlap here. Toxic air contaminants, if you think about that, those are things that are hard on our respiratory system. There's quite an assortment here. I'm not going to go into the names, but when we think of them, we think they're just about the respiratory system. Next slide. But actually, if you look at that column, it says categories. You can see there's all these little letters in there. That's other ways that they are used and may be harmful. And they're little codes that were established by the people who do the mapping tool. And it's a little complicated because they come from a bunch of different sources. And if you want to know more about it, I have a handout in the back that explains it in more detail. But for example, F is for fumigants, T, toxic air contaminant, C for carcinogens, and so on. This is not all of them, there's a couple more. So here's another overlapping category. You can see a lot of those red squares overlap. This is the carcinogens, and you can see there's some up there around Wilder Ranch, but there's quite a few in the Pajaro Valley. So the red squares are by weight. So the pale pink is up to 50% of the state average, then a darker pink is 50 to 75%, and the red squares are 75% or above the state average. That's by weight. So here's a sample list of carcinogens used near us. And again, you can see the overlap. The top four are also toxic air contaminants. We're going to look a little bit more closely at number 5, malathion. It's a cholinesterase inhibitor. And those are, their target is the nervous system, both of insects, and they also think that affect the nervous systems of humans. So cholinesterase inhibitors are newsworthy. You may be familiar with the famous one, chlorpyrifos. Chlorpyrifos became famous because it was due to be banned by our federal EPA and got a reprieve from the Trump administration. And then with the administration changing, with the legal ruling by a judge who said couldn't figure out what the state level was, that reprieve was rescinded. And in the meantime, it was removed from use by the state of California. So in the EPA, it's just removed for use on food, but in California, it's totally removed from use. That's supposed to be happening. And a lot of groups worked really hard to make that happen, including our local SNAP group. So here's a little trend map. You can see in Santa Cruz County, over time, the use of chlorpyrifos, the one on the left, went down to almost zero by 2018 before it was removed from use in Santa Cruz County. And our ag commissioner was very helpful in that regard. But in the meantime, malathion, which has a similar mechanism of effect and is supposedly less toxic, the use was kind of holding steady for the last 2 decades. And if you look at that y-axis, it's double the amount in the malathion one. So in 2018, there were over 10,000 pounds of malathion applied in Santa Cruz County. So here's a map by township. Oh, yeah. We lost our place.
Next one down, 14.
Oh, okay, sorry. Here's our senior neighborhood. This is, I live about 3 blocks past that Palm Tree. This is from the Levee Trail, and this is the fields that surround our senior neighborhood. When we moved here, when we moved into our neighborhood, it was pretty, there was a lot of crop rotation. They grew lettuce and broccoli and strawberries, kind of rotating through the field. And sometimes they put cover crops in. And over the years now, it's raspberries all the time, thousands of raspberries year after year. And okay. So malathion, this is malathion by township in our region all the way down to the Salinas Valley. That kind of squished part up at the top that looks like the state of Texas, that's Watsonville. And our senior community is kind of right about where Dallas would be on the Texas map. So when we look at trends, we can see cholinesterase inhibitor use has gone down. And in the meantime, there's another chemical that's on the upswing in a different category. That's Neonicotinoids. And they've been newsworthy because of the concerns about the impact on bees. And it's kind of debatable how much they're contributing to the bee issues, but they are known to be hard to pollinators, butterflies, bumblebees, and other beneficial insects. They also persist for a long time in soil and water, and there's some emerging science about they are neurotoxins and they may be having impacts on humans as well. So what do we want to have happen? Well, we've seen more integrated pest management, but often that means, well, what's the next one down the list of toxicity instead of starting at the bottom with what's the least toxic method we can use and what's truly sustainable when we consider human health costs as well as the cost of agriculture. And we've seen in the Pajaro Valley that the diversity soil quality, can lead to more pests and diseases and require more chemical inputs. And there's also home improvements. So what is positive, more organic in our valley? We'd like to see it go up to 100%. We'd like to see technology help our agriculture become smarter and healthier. We want our workforce to be involved in that and creating green jobs. We'd like to see more capacity for us to distribute our food and eat it right here in our region. And we'd like our diversity to be restored, both of the crops and of the native species, and we want our soil health restored. So this is kind of our vision. That valley could be a laboratory for transition and innovation to organic and regenerative ag. We can be a greener community with healthy workers and residents and social and environmental justice. Thank you.
Our next speaker, how is the audio? Oh, this is a split vote. A little fuzzy.
You sound good.
Yeah, that would be great.
Can we drop the shades a little bit because of the sun in the back? Is that possible? Thank you.
There's a dark shade, yes.
Thank you for the feedback. Okay, our next speaker is named Mr. Woody Rahanick. He was a farm worker in Washington State orchards for 18 years. Then he was also a special ed teacher here at PDUSD for another 18 years. Also a member of Safe Ag, Safe Schools, a founding member of CORA, and he's got some stuff to talk about humans and regenerative agriculture. Please welcome Woody.
My voice doesn't project. Is this okay? Can you hear me? Is that too fuzzy?
Don't get closer.
How about like that?
Yeah.
Is that good, Vacha? Okay. So I don't know how to switch these out, so I might have to do it for you. So let's think, as you look out from the top floor here over the valley, you see a lot of plastic and square miles of parks and white plastic parks laid down so that fumigants can be pumped in to kill soil pathogens. After 10 days, the parks are cut and the fumigant gas residues take flight. Yeah. And what helps us visualize some possible solutions to this is looking at the whole valley here. Okay, with the heart of the valley is Watsonville in the middle. Pajaro has about 3,000 organic acres. There are about 4,000 other organic acres in the whole county, which Dr. Joji's going to talk about. But some of the solutions and problems and solutions to both chemical dependency and climate change, if we look at the whole valley rather than just the city of Watsonville. So I'm going to talk about three things: chemical dependency, regeneration, and the Watsonville Climate Action Plan 2030. Next slide, please. As Kathleen mentioned, we live in a neighborhood of 1,000 seniors in the northeast part of Watsonville, adjacent to farmland. It's conventional chemical methods. I like to say that we started out on raspberries, but soon hit the harder stuff. Because farm workers, children at nearby Anselmo School, and seniors, and other residents from a public health standpoint are vulnerable to spray drift, and farm worker families are disproportionately affected. This is a long-standing environmental justice issue that's never been addressed. Okay, next one. Pesticide drift, and for example, from fumigants here in 2018, is pervasive and real. Two recent UCLA studies linking childhood cancers to 13 specific pesticides, non-fumigant, linked pregnant mothers living up to 2.5 miles away. 2.5 miles of spray drift. Yet the state says if you follow the label, the spray doesn't drift. Next slide, please. The problem is our county, these are toxic air contaminants, which include fumigants and other pesticides. As you can see, we're hemmed in. Our county has the highest percentage compared to overall pesticide load of toxic air contaminants and fumigants of any place in the state. And most of it, as you can see, is concentrated in the Pajaro Valley. And then we all say, oh, it's the strawberries. Oh, yeah. But the problem is you don't need a weatherman to see which way the wind blows. Any way it blows, it's going to affect these delicate communities. Now, here are 4 strikes against, well, let's look first at some of the chemicals. So first, I don't know how well you can see this, but chlorpicrin was a nerve gas used in World War I. It is considered to be a toxic air contaminant. It's used in fumigating buildings. And 500,000 of the 1 million pounds of pesticide used in Santa Cruz County in 2018 were chlorpicrin. Okay. It's considered to be a fumigant and toxic air contaminant. Okay, 1,3-dichloropropanone, better known as T-Lone, 200,000 pounds. And these are gases, so that's a lot of gas. 200,000 pounds were applied in counties, mostly in our valley. Okay, here are 4 strikes against chemical fumigant use in our valley, in our county. Further down. Like this? Okay. Okay. I have it here. It was supposed to come up here. Good. 1, toxic air contaminants, we just talked about. Hazardous airborne gases that require special permits. The state is delaying advance public notice of their application. Why? Number 2, chlorpicrin, with the 500,000 pounds of fibers, it produces a greenhouse gas called nitrous oxide at 7 to 12 times the rate of untreated fields. Does that sound right? Nitrous oxide has 300 times the warming power of carbon dioxide and lasts 100 years in the atmosphere. Ironically, that's being used to replace ozone-depleting methyl bromide. So as methyl bromide is being phased out from 1988 to 2005, supposedly cut off, though it was used here until 2016, as methyl bromide was being phased out, chlorpicrin and T-Lone were being brought in. Number 3, the carbon footprint of all this plastic is amazing and uncalculated. No one has figured out the carbon footprint of all this petrochemical plastics, nor how to recycle it. China's not taking it, Vietnam's not taking it. It's being stockpiled as far as we know, and may not be recycled. Number 4, this is important from a standpoint of shifting to regenerative agriculture. Fumigants destroy beneficial soil microbes, which are essential to effective carbon drawdown. A teaspoon of healthy soil may contain 1 billion microbes. A teaspoon of sterilized soil may contain almost none. So these are major flaws in our conventional chemical system. We're going to look now at an explanation from a composter who is in Detroit, Michigan, who's going to explain the whole story of regenerative agriculture. Thank you. Her name is Patrick Mayer.
Compost in the city of Detroit. I want to share with you a story about soil, farming, and compost, and how it can be a solution for climate change. Climate change is a big problem. It's happening because there's too much carbon in our atmosphere, but carbon is not our enemy. It's the building block of life. Everything alive is made of it. It's us. The problem and the solution are a simple matter of balance. Let's step back and look at the 5 pools where carbon is stored on planet Earth. Starting about 500 million years ago, when plants came onto land, carbon began to cycle in an amazing balance. A balance that allowed for life as we know it to evolve. Then one life form, us, figured out how to extract carbon from the fossil pool. We've been burning it for energy, putting it into play, and disrupting that balance. How we manage land and do agriculture is moving even more carbon from the soil and biosphere into the atmosphere. Specifically, we've moved 880 gigatons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is heating up the planet and destabilizing our climate. Now, the oceans have absorbed a lot of this excess carbon, which is resulting in warming temperatures, acidification, and accelerating a mass extinction of sea life. In order to stop global warming, of course we have to stop burning fossil carbon. The big question is, where do we put the excess carbon to get the cycle back in balance? Remember when I said that soil was a part of the solution? It literally is. Plants, with sunlight and water, perform photosynthesis. They pull carbon in from the air and turn it into carbohydrates, sugars. Then they pump some of those sugars down through their roots to feed microorganisms who use that carbon to build soil. There we go. Carbon moved. The plants pull it in and the soil stores it. Nature's living technology is amazing. Scientists have recently discovered that applying a thin layer of compost one time sets up an ongoing positive feedback loop that brings more and more carbon into the soil each year. In concert with our regenerative practices like not tilling the soil, planting trees and cover crops, and good grazing, we can build and retain gigatons of soil carbon. This is carbon farming, this is regenerative agriculture. More carbon in the ground is good for us. It makes healthy soil. Healthy soil makes for more nutritious food, and it holds way more water so crops are more resilient in the face of drought. That's good news for families, farmers like me, and everyone that eats. The way we grow our food, fuel, and even our clothes either puts carbon into the atmosphere or pulls it down into the ground. The regeneration of soil is the task of our generation. Our health, the health of the soil, and the health of the planet are one and the same.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. We're running out of time, so I'll cut it short. But we do need to discuss. Okay, this graph, Watsonville City Council just passed their climate action plan 2030. But with all the interventions, there's still going to be 100,000, we are going to be 100,000 tons of greenhouse gases short of making zero emissions by 2030. Obviously, we can use the soil in our valley, and that is one of the, in the plan, it talks about carbon sequestration. Next slide. Okay, carbon sequestration. Okay, using regenerative agriculture and tree planting, also habitat rebuilding. But that's just penciled in. It's up to us to make this an implementation. So I'm going to cut it there. Dr. Joji will talk about organic gardening here. We need to build on that momentum and get all stakeholders to talk to each other to bring in regenerative organic ag as a solution to pesticide problems and climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Woody. I do want to thank our other co-sponsors who I forgot to mention: Safe Ag, Safe Schools, Community Action Board of Santa Cruz County, the Watsonville Film Festival, very excited to have, and of course the Center for Farmworker Families. And speaking of the Center for Farmworker Families, our next speaker, Dr. Ann Lopez, who welcomed you. If you don't know about Ann, she is the Executive Director for the Center for Farmworker Families. She is a Professor Emeritus and taught courses in biology, environmental science, ecology and botany in the biology department at San Jose City College for many, many years. She has a PhD from UC Santa Cruz in environmental studies, where she studied the impact of NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, on the farms of West Central Mexico. Her book, entitled The Farmworker's Journey, summarizes the results, arguments, and conclusions of her research and was published by UC Press. Please welcome Dr. Ann Lopez.
Just project well, please.
Can you hear my voice better?
Yes.
Yes. No one has ever told me I talk too softly. I want to talk a little bit about the human side of the pesticide, pesticide issue. I've been working in the farm worker community locally now for over 20 years. And quite frankly, I am sick and tired of meeting the children of farm workers that have cancer, ADHD, autism spectrum syndrome, and learning disabilities. It's like an epidemic among the farm worker community here. And all of these conditions can be related scientifically to pesticide exposure. And certainly if pesticides can drift a total of 2.5 miles from the application site, a lot of the farm workers and their families that live in this area are going to be exposed. To me, this is a grave example of environmental racism. This would never happen in Los Gatos, Saratoga, even Santa Cruz. Why is it okay to sweep the children of farm workers under the rug and have their lives stolen from them, essentially? And to me, this is especially tragic because in my research, what I found is most parents want their children educated and out of farm work. Well, if they have these conditions, the chances of them being successful academically are greatly reduced, and many of them won't even survive. So I'll tell you 2 quick stories. One is of a young woman that migrated from Mexico, came here undocumented, worked in the hoop houses picking berries, and after about 7 years, she couldn't swallow. And so she went to a doctor and was diagnosed with terminal throat cancer and returned to Mexico to die. Now, there's no obituaries in the Santa Cruz Sentinel. There's no information about her life, her death, nothing. Why doesn't she count? That's number one. And number two, last year, about this time, I gave a farm worker a rental assistance check, since the economy for farm workers the last 2 years has been terrible. And I asked her if her family was excited about Christmas and they were looking forward to having a happy Christmas together. And she looked very sad. And she said, we moved closer to a field to save rent. And my daughter came down with cancer. So my husband and my daughter are spending Christmas at Stanford. These are the stories I hear regularly. This is not an isolated event or an isolated issue. And I brought a farm worker friend who I've known for many years. This is Ernestina Solorio, and she lives with 2 sons with ADHD, and I'd like her to tell you her story.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Ernestina Solorio.
Good afternoon, my name is Ernestina Solorio.
Yo soy una persona que trabaja en la agricultura, en la pesca de la presa,
I work in agriculture picking strawberries,
desde 1993.
and I've been doing this since 1993.
He trabajado también en la pesca de la mora,
I've also worked picking berries
de la manzana
and apples,
y también, pues más que nada en la presa, ¿verdad? Pero he trabajado también limpiando casas
and I've also cleaned houses.
y en una florería también.
and I've worked in a florist shop.
Ah, lo que yo les quiero decir que tengo 4 hijos de familia.
I have 4 children.
Tengo un joven de 24 años
I have one, my oldest son is 24.
y otra hija de 20 años.
I have a son that, a daughter that's 20.
Yo de estos 2 niños, de mis 2 jóvenes primeros, no, con el tiempo de que estaba embarazada yo no trabajé.
So when she was pregnant with these older children, she didn't work in the field.
Porque todavía estaba con mi esposo y entonces él no me dejaba trabajar.
So she was still married at that time, and her husband wouldn't let her work in the fields when she was pregnant.
Pero después empecé a tener problemas con él
And after a while, she started having problems with her husband,
y fue cuando estuve embarazada de mi tercer hijo
and she became pregnant with her 3rd son,
y me vi en la necesidad de estar trabajando en los files.
and she had to go to work in the fields.
En ese tiempo todavía yo no reconocía lo que era o no sabía lo que era trabajar en un lugar orgánico.
And at this time, I just wasn't aware that a better choice might have been to work in an organic production system.
Entonces yo estuve expuesta a los pesticidas
And so I was exposed to pesticides,
y tengo mi hijo con problemas de aprendizaje.
and I have my son who has problems learning disabilities,
Igual que el otro niño de 9 años,
and I have a younger son that has the same problem.
ellos están en la escuela en un programa que se llama RISE porque necesitan ayuda.
And they're in a special program at school called RISE, where apparently they put small groups of children together with a teacher instead of whole classrooms to learn.
Y yo como madre les platico que es bien difícil tener un niño con una incapacidad.
And I just want to tell you that as a single mother, farm worker, it's very difficult to live with children with ADHD.
Porque yo, bueno, soy como madre soltera porque me separé de mi esposo
Because I separated from my husband,
y tengo que estar al frente de ver mis hijos
and I have to put my children as the primary responsibility in my life.
y con mi hijo que tiene el HGT es bien difícil porque él se me sale de la escuela cuando él quiere y me tienen que estar hablando de la escuela para que vaya a ver en qué lo puedo ayudar o llevarlo otra vez de regreso a la escuela.
And so she has this 3rd son that she had, the first one that she had that had ADHD is basically totally out of control. He leaves school when he wants to, the school calls him, she has to leave work to go find him, pick him up, and it's just created chaos. I've been to her house and it's just amazing. What I call her my hero, that she lives with these conditions.
Para mí es bien difícil lidiar con él porque él a veces no está de acuerdo conmigo o yo no estoy de acuerdo con él con lo que él hace.
So it's very hard to live with him because we very seldom agree on anything.
Yo lo tengo en consejería, lo tengo con su doctor.
I have him in counseling, and he also has a doctor in it.
Si él toma
And he's on-
medicamento controlado,
He's on some kind of medication to help control these things.
entonces yo pienso que esto viene a base de los pesticidas como yo estuve expuesta, nada más que yo no he encontrado una respuesta, pero yo como madre pudiera decir que es mucho mejor unas personas que estén embarazadas no trabajar y que no se expongan a los pesticidas para que no pongan en peligro o en riesgo a sus hijos como lo que está pasando con el mío.
So she's saying that all she knows is that to be a mother and to have a child like this is very difficult, and she thinks that all women who are pregnant should not be exposed to any pesticides at all.
Si yo me hubiera dado cuenta a lo que me estaba exponiendo, nunca me hubiera nunca quizás hubiera haber buscado trabajo en algún otro lugar, pero no exponerme a los pesticidas para no afectar a mis hijos.
if I had known what was gonna happen, I probably would have tried to find a different kind of work or anything else. But unfortunately, I didn't realize the connection to pesticides until I already had 2 sons that were affected.
Pero como yo vengo de Michoacán, México, y viene uno muchas de las veces con deseos de trabajar, prosperar y salir adelante, entonces uno no se da cuenta de lo que se está exponiendo o de lo que está exponiendo a su familia.
So she came from a real impoverished situation in Michoacán, Mexico, and when people come to the U.S. from these impoverished areas, they want to work in order to have a better life, and we're just basically clueless about these issues until they affect us directly.
Pienso que es mi historia que tengo.
Thank you.
So it sounds like we're better off without the mic. Okay, well then we'll just drop the mic. Our next speaker, let me get his. Kathleen, what's your back? Yeah. Want to whisper? Or the Touch ID.
So,
All right, thank you, Kathleen, for your shiny new laptop. Our next speaker, Dr. John Silva, originally from Providence, Rhode Island. John moved to California to pursue his medical residency at the University of California, San Francisco. He finished his residency at the County Hospital in Santa Rosa, California, then moved to Salinas, where he has practiced since 1987. Besides practicing and serving the farm worker communities in Monterey County, Dr. Silva has served on the Community Advisory Board to 2 NIH studies, including the landmark Chamaco study. The 20-year study has investigated the long-term effects of organophosphate insecticide exposure on the mothers and children of Salinas. Please welcome Dr. John Silva.
Can I get it to go to view? Using your screen is better. So thanks everyone, thanks CORA for giving me this opportunity. From a Monterey County interloper to come down here and have a chance to speak to you. Can you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry. But I did make sure I invited some of my Santa Cruz County physician friends to come as well. So in the first row here is Dr. Valerie Bengals. She served on the Chamaco's Community Advisory Board as well with me over the years. So I'm going to go, that was a, thank you, Dr. Lopez, and thank you, gracias, Ernestina, para compartir con nosotros su historial. Me dolía mucho para oírlo, y trabajando en las clínicas como yo hago, yo sé exactamente, podemos discutir más tarde, tengo ideas. So I'm going to really truncate this because, there's obviously good information here, and I want to stay in my lane, which is medical. I don't want to get too far away from the medical. So I'm here because I want to be part of this community request to navigate away from traditional agricultural practices to safer ones, ones that keep in mind all the costs of pesticide use, particularly the health effects, particularly the effects like Ernestina was talking about. Those, you cannot put a dollar figure on those. Unfortunately, there is good news with the newer Chamaco study and then this most recent study out of UCLA that came earlier this year. So how big is the problem? Quickly, the California Pesticide Illness Surveillance Program. There is something in the legislature that allows us to track this. The tracking isn't that great. In 2017, there were over 2,000 cases reported, 1,250 episodes, but surprisingly, only 1/3 were agricultural. And this same data set says 176 cases were children under age 18. And California DPR, who should be our ally, said in 2017 there were no children exposed to agricultural use pesticides while at school. So I don't know how that happens. So a bigger and bigger problem that's happening is this problem with drift. I think Dr. Fujimura will tell us about the chemicals that are used now, and they turn into gas more easily, and the side effect of that is they will get up into the vapor at an easier level. Monterey County and Santa Cruz County specifically were cited with larger episodes. So there's a few counties in California where the cases are more than the number of episodes by a lot, and Santa Cruz County is one of those. So bigger accidents happen here. So this is where I'm getting out of my lane. I have people who've spoken greatly about that today, what the specific pesticides are. And this is from the NIOSH, the national database. Anything I want to say here? But the important thing is manners to apply pesticides are more and more in the gaseous form, like I just mentioned, become more volatile, that is able to turn into gas and vapor and lower temperatures. So more non-targets, more none of the desired targets are getting affected. Okay, let's see what 4 looks like. Yeah, so this is more about, so what about the history of exposures? If you're talking to someone, or someone like Ernestina is talking to you, when they talk about the exposure, they often talk about a funny smell. They notice a funny smell first, and then their eyes and their skin start hurting. And most cases end there, but in the more severe cases, they might end up in the emergency room where Dr. Brangle and I might see them with the more severe and life-threatening complications. So once again, this is what we would notice in the emergency room, but basically respiratory tract, skin irritation. With a higher exposure, they'll start having central nervous system side effects, just like a cockroach would fall over and die. That's what could happen to a patient because their nervous system will get affected, their GI system, they'll just get worse and worse. There may be an antidote in the emergency room that will help some people. So it's important to keep this number handy, the Poison Control Center. If you're suspicious, call this number. The line works. I called it this morning. And most of the cases that are reported to see California DPR come in this way. Most of the cases reported come in by way of Poison Control Center, not by way of doctor's first report, which that's embarrassing. So now I'm going to go from acute to chronic exposure, and this is the kind of thing that Ernestina's story really highlights. So the first thing is you probably all heard of the agricultural health worker study. That started in the 90s, and that's when it first started to show a relationship with cancer and people who were farmers, for the most part farmers, and relatively well off in their North Carolina and Iowa communities. So potentially their cancer risk was less, but there were cancers showing up at a greater rate amongst the farmers and their spouses and others, and that was prostate cancer. There were a multitude of cancers, but particularly people started talking about prostate cancer and breast cancer in the spouses, and this is starting in the late 1990s. So that in America, things started picking up at this point. Then the Chamaco study, which we were talking about, what an important study. It's a longitudinal study, started with 600 brave women in Salinas who were pregnant and allowed their blood and urine to be obtained. And we've been following those offspring for, it's been 20 years now, it's gotta be at least 20 years. And what's interesting is we could match their progress, their neurologic and neurodevelopmental progress with the mother's exposure to organophosphate pesticides when they were pregnant. And there was a pretty clear correlation between pesticide exposure, and at first it was an unusual syndrome called pervasive developmental disorder, which is kind of a precursor to ADHD. And then as the children grew older, the neurobehavioral testing got more specific, so they could start doing the WASC, the Weckler test of performance of youngsters. And those youngsters with the higher exposure during pregnancy had lower scores there. Then as they got a little bit older, we were able to check IQ. It's not a great study, but IQ started to be shown to be lower in kids when they got to be in high school. And a persistent effect is, for some reason, boys in this study, adolescent boys, clearly have lower IQs the higher the mom's exposure was. So it's a variety of neurodevelopmental disorders. So this is a very important study that not enough people know about. But we know about it, and there's resources in the back about the Chamaco study. Please take a look at those. I got them all offline. And finally, this year, thank you. I hadn't been paying as much attention to SAS as I should have. Adam, and you forwarded me the information about this UCLA study, which is interesting in that it just came out this year, and it showed proximity to fields that had been sprayed and people and children's neurologic health. And it was found that there was a clear correlation between proximity, no matter what occupation the mother had, and a variety of neurologic tumors, real brain cancers, you know, meter by meter increase in likelihood depending how far away you were from the field exposure. So this is, I think the next slide I used a bad word. I think I said, this is tremendously damning. I mean, the combination of Chamacos and now this information out of UCLA. Okay. Yeah, I think in combination with the Chamaco study, this is very damaging. That these two neurologic phenomena happening to children, and really, I don't know how we can stand for this. So that was an abbreviated version of what I wanted to bring to people about this clear relationship between exposure. These are elegant studies to think that you can go and a woman in the hospital, this was done at the Tividad Medical Center. Most of the patients were from Clínica de Salud del Valle de Salinas, a clinic system that's operating right here in Pajaro. And we were able to, the women were gracious enough to give us their parts of their body to be studied, and that still lives. Dr. Eskenazi holds on to these specimens up in Berkeley right now. And altogether, there have been 150 different studies that UC Berkeley School of Public Health has published about this data set, this 600 brave women, and now these young people. What's really cool is Chamacos, the researchers these were the questions they had. How children were exposed to pesticides and other environmental chemicals, this is what they wanted to prove. How these exposures are related to children's growth, neurodevelopment, and health. And finally, how to reduce exposure to children and families. Why I bring this up here is that a very important part of Chamacos' work is mitigation and harm reduction. And so those two poster boards in the back, the one in the middle, I left some flyers in front of that. That's information that UC Berkeley School of Public Health has put together to give to families related to, you know, what is the correct way for dad to enter the house after, or mom to enter the house after long days of work? How do you correctly wash your hands in the fields? It's got to be warm water. You got to use soap. You have to do it for the correct amount of time. So there's a lot of specifics about risk reduction and mitigation that the Chamaco study has helped us with. There was one more thing I was going to make. Oh, they do a big component about, since so many people, last point I'm going to make, since so many people in Salinas, if you check the house dust in Salinas, it has pretty curiously high levels of organophosphate metabolites of anybody. So it's coming in by pesticide use, of course, people spraying for termites and spiders, which are rampant in Salinas. So there's safe ways to use that. My flyers in the back discuss safe ways to take care of pesticide, things that you or I might do to keep suppression down. And finally, when it comes to food safety, you know, wash the vegetables, anything with a thick skin on it, please wash it, particularly cucumbers, squash if you're going to eat the skin. It only has to be tap water, it doesn't have to be hot tap water. There's one more thing I was going to mention. Okay, anyway, there's a bunch of safety mitigation things you can do at home to keep without spending a lot of money on organic food. So thank you for your attention, and thank you, Adam. This has been a great time.
We're going to switch laptops.
This one.
Our next speaker is Joji Morimoto, Assistant Cooperative Extension Organic Production Specialist, is his preferred title. Mr. Morimoto's research focuses on developing sustainable fertility and soil-borne disease management strategies in organic and conventional strawberries and vegetables in California. Research projects include optimizing anaerobic soil disinfestation as an alternative to fumigations in strawberries and Brussels sprouts, developing N fertility management strategies for organic strawberries and organic vegetables, and strengthening the organic research network in the Central Coastal California. Please welcome Joji Morimoto.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joji Morimoto. I'm a cooperative extension organic production specialist based at UC Santa Cruz. I've been in this area for 25 years, working at UC Santa Cruz. But the current position, I was hired 2 years ago. This is the first position fully dedicated to organic production in the UC system. I'm the only one, believe it or not, working full-time for organic production in the University of California system. I'm very humbled and honored to be in that position. And today, great talks, everybody so far. And I'm going to talk about the current status and the history of organic farming in this California and Canopy first. And then a little bit of the tools that we are studying, and then some suggestions how to increase more organic production in this county. So let's go from the bigger view, greater view. California produced almost 40% of total organic production sales of the whole nation. So California is the #1 organic production state, and about $36 billion. And then some fact of California organic farms, about 5% of total farms in California are organic. That's 2017. And the top 3 counties in California, there are 7 different categories about the organic acreage, excluding pasture and rangeland. Do you have any idea? Top 3 counties in California. Which counties are they? Kern, Kings, and Sonoma. Those are the top 3. How about organic farm numbers per county? Any idea? San Diego. Actually, San Diego has the highest organic farm in the country. More than 300. A lot of small organic farms. And Sonoma and Fresno. No Santa Cruz yet. And how about organic farm percent? Yay, Santa Cruz. 18% is the highest in the state. And the same as Marine, and followed by Monterey. So this area has pretty high organic farm percentage in terms of farmland. And organic farm gross sales, large counties like Kern and Monterey, 10%. Now I have a statewide responsibility of organic farming research and extension. So as you see here, organic farming in California is very diverse, which makes my work very interesting. So let's focus on Santa Cruz County. This is how organic acreage in the county changed for the last 20 years. Starting with like 2,000 acres in 2020, and we have now fourfold, 8,000 acres now in Santa Cruz County. How about number of organic farms in the county? It's almost doubled. This is the other axis. So it was like 80 farms in 2000, and now it's almost 160 farms. So the average size of organic farm it was about 30 acres in 2000. Now it's almost 60 acres. It's increased. This is the most current recent number I found for Santa Cruz County organic statistics. Number of farms, as I mentioned, 18%. That's the highest in the state. in 2017. And the farmland plus pasture land acres, 14% is the organic. And vegetable acreage is much higher, 51%. But this is a little bit caveat. Vegetable can be grown like 2 or 3 crops per year on the same ground. So most likely it's a double or triple counted. So actual land itself is like 20% or so, or something. And the strawberry acreage, this is annual crop, so 27% is organic. So strawberries and vegetable combined, my best guess is about half, 50% of field in Santa Cruz County is about organic. And talk about organic strawberries. Late 1980s, that's the beginning of organic strawberry production in the state, and probably in the country. Swanberry Farm, and also Steve Wiesman, now Professor Emeritus at UC Santa Cruz, started this side-by-side comparison of organic and conventional strawberries in 1987. It was a 3-year study, and then published, and then they found after 3 years, organic production yield was 80% of conventional, but with price premium, it can be commercially viable. That was our conclusion. And after that, organic strawberry acreage started to increase gradually. So 1987 was the experiment, like here, right? 10 years before here, right? So it took 30 years right now. So after 30 years, we have almost 4,000 acres of organic strawberry in the state, which represent 12% of total strawberry acreage in the state. 12% took 30 years. Think about it. How long is it going to take more to get higher? And then Santa Cruz County represents 15% of total organic strawberry acreage in the state. So this area has contributed to the whole acreage growth. And if you see this pattern, it's kind of interesting pattern. The first 10 years or so, it's kind of not much increase, but jumped up and then steady and jumped up again. And why this pattern? What do you think? Especially second jump, that's the coincide with the timing that Walmart and Costco started to sell organic in big time. So the first time was like a direct marketing major, CSA farmers market. Then large natural food store like Whole Foods came in, and then large retail store came in, right? So a part of it, the message is, part of the organic acreage increase is market driven. So consumer demand is so important. Without consumers who understand, informed about organic farming, organic production did not increase. So let's talk about some challenges of organic soil production that I've been working on. One of them is the soil-borne disease management. Strawberry is susceptible to many soil-borne pathogens, but this is the most classic one, Bersium wilt, caused by Bersium 98. It's very difficult to manage because it can be hosted by more than 400 plant species, including lettuce, cauliflower, artichokes, apples, and strawberry is one of the most sensitive one to this pathogen. And also this pathogen can survive for several years without even host plants. So in organic system, it requires rotate land out of the host crops for 5 years or more. It has to have a long rotation period. It's very difficult. We had this pathogen outbreak of this disease in UCSC farm, and then we're kind of stuck. But fortunately, we learned the method called biological soil disinfestation. We labeled it anaerobic soil disinfestation later, developed in the Netherlands and Japan independently around the year 2000. And then since then, we've been optimized this method for California strawberry production. The principle of this method is acid fermentation in anaerobic soil. So feed the soil microbes, native microbes, with a carbon source like rice bran we use, and then moisten the amended soil and cover with plastic to create the fermentation process in the soil. So it flourishes some bacteria and kills pathogenic fungi. Some example, we did the experiment, Macropomina, different pathogen infested field in organic field in Oxnard. And farther right, near side, is the grower standard. It was very bad. And with this approach, AHC, we were able to double the crop yield. But this approach is not like fumigant. It's a biological approach, so it has a lot of variables. This shows a different pathogen, Fusarium oxysporum. To control this pathogen, ASD has to be done during the summer. This is an example of untreated control, Ranzadine. If you do fall when temperature is low, or right now, it actually makes things worse. But if you do it during the summer, it works. Basically, this pathogen, Fusarium, actually loves rice brown too. But we have to feed bacteria first to create fermentation process to suppress Fusarium. So temperature is another important part. Also, another fertility management, nitrogen fertility management. Some growers here. So some growers may be familiar with the irrigation and nitrogen management online support tool. It's called Crop Manage, and it's been used among conventional growers in this area widely, but it doesn't work for organic systems. So myself and some other collaborators are working on right now to make this tool available to organic growers by integrating some database for organic management. And the last thing is the one way to increase organic food consumption and reproduction may be organic school food. And it might be a great way to reduce pesticide exposure to children. That's a very important issue. And also provide locally grown organic food to everyone, especially for children whose families cannot afford organic food. And then a lot of NGOs are already working on this, so I think it's a very good approach. So take-home message is Santa Cruz County has the highest organic farmland percentage in California. Market consumer demand is the main driver of organic production. And fertility and soil-borne disease management tools for organic production are being developed. And organic school food can be a great way to support local organic growers and provide healthy food. Thank you very much.
We have one more speaker, and then we'll do a little Q&A and statements from the audience. Thank you all for being with us and for our great speakers for sharing such great information. Our final speaker, Javier Zamora, JSM Organics. Javier was born and raised in Michoacan, Mexico. His father was a farmer, and Javier started farming in Mexico at 11 years old. Javier came to the United States in his 20s, eventually traveling to the Central Coast and deciding to return to farming. Javier worked for a fresh-cut flower grower in the area before establishing his own organic farm on 2 acres in 2012. Since then, he has expanded his operation to 40 acres that are certified organic by CCOF. JSM Organic Farm specializes in strawberries, heirloom tomatoes, summer squash, peppers, and cut flowers. JSM Organic Farms has the capacity to grow 300 varieties of flowers, including both annuals and perennials. Javier grows South African native plants such as proteas and safari sunsets, as well as flowers like ranunculus, tulips, lilies, lavender, calendula, heather, and boronia. This is a great bio. JSM Organic Farm sells its products to farmers markets, retail stores, and a couple of wholesalers. Please welcome Javier Zamora.
You can just leave it like that, yeah. Oh, thank you, Adam. Well, such a pleasure to be here as part of our community and with such a wealth of knowledge and people that I work with, like Professor, telling us what's in the soil, what to do and what not to do and how to treat it. And one of the reasons why I'm here is just because, again, I'm really blessed that I, as a farm worker and as an immigrant in Mexico coming to the States, have been able to achieve, quite a bit of success by farming organically. yes, when I came to the area, I worked for a conventional grower. I learned a lot, but I learned, first of all, not to farm with chemicals. Secondly, treat people correctly, treat your farm workers, your staff, the people that are making you succeed, be part of your success. Share the wealth, learn from them. And that's one of the issues that sometimes big farms and farm owners don't really have that in their head. And if they do, they seldom apply good common sense and good treatment to some of the workers. There are a few that do really, really good job. I feel like I'm one of them that I definitely think that if I don't have them, I'm absolutely nothing. I can only farm probably around my house. I wouldn't be able to have a successful farm like the way it is now. Adam mentioned a little bit in 2011 when I came to this area, I started with just an acre and a half. Now we farm over 100 acres, and we own a farm now. This season we ended up with 48 employees. Some of the employees making $55, close to $60,000 as farm workers. That's unheard of. Why have I been able to achieve this? Is because I've been able to bridge the gap from the farm to the end consumer. And the end consumer is the one that actually can drive these things organically in a way that will make a change. Because I was just listening to some of the stats that you guys were mentioning. Like, farms are actually getting larger. There's more farms that are farmed organically, but larger farms. What that actually means is that Javier Zamora and Jose Hernandez and maybe Hannah Lyon and Christina Dunley are actually going out of business. There's no smaller farms that are independently owned. There are a lot of smaller farmers that are part of big conglomerates, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What we have to do is gotta make sure that if we need a organic community, we have to get more people involved. Meaning we have to make sure that we teach the end consumer what really happens at the farm, and we have to teach new generations to farm organically. It needs to happen. If we don't do it, believe me, if you guys were talking about health issues, like the study that you doctor and you guys have done, those things are really scary. It's not only, it's happening to us as farm workers directly, but it's getting to you. You guys are not on the field, but you guys are eating the strawberries that get fumigated I don't know how many times per week. I'm not saying organic guys, we don't use some stuff that it's probably harmful as well. It won't kill you. It'll give you a little bit of diarrhea, but it won't kill you. But the other shit, the other stuff, it's really bad. It is that. So we have to educate ourselves. We have to understand who the growers are, who the farm workers are, and then where the food's coming from. And you can make a change. Organic, it's getting bigger and bigger. Not necessarily because more and more farms again. It's because the bigger farms know that there's a lot of money behind it. And it's not that expensive. It's not like growers were getting 300% more if I grow organic strawberries or tomatoes versus conventional strawberries or tomatoes. The grower is not getting all the money. But you guys are paying a little more. Educating yourself, that's what makes a big difference. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here, not because I'm a genius and all these other things. I am a really blessed individual that I have been able to achieve, really good things in 10 years. It sounds like a little time, but it's a lot. I work 7 days a week. Before I came in here, I was preparing my land with my workers to plant strawberries for next year. Just went in, jumped in the shower, went in my new booth and came out to see it. So, I don't have like a really fancy PowerPoint, but I did have some pictures of the farm, that's what we do. So in order to, treat our soil and maintain our soil and natural resources, we have to be part of our community. We have to make sure that we use techniques and implement different ideas to make sure that the soil gets better and better, that we keep building that organic matter, that we're not fumigating, that we are, listening to people like el señor Dr. Morimoto, somebody like Sam Earnshaw or Joanne, that they come in with little hedgerows or bird boxes. We have to keep a farm. We have to farm in a way that it's more balanced with our mother nature. We have to farm with mother nature. By the way, you're welcome to come and visit. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't. I'm just 15 minutes away, and you don't really need to have like you might need a mask if you're not vaccinated, but you don't have to have like an HR interview before you can come and visit. Nothing like that. It's just so that's what a independently owned grower can do. You can invite the community to be part of that. So you can see how diverse my farm is. There's riparian areas, there is just diversity of different crops, there is just diversity even in employees. You don't just find Jose and Miguel and Maria, you find Francois, you find Hannah, you find Cassandra, Christina. Anyone that wants to be part of a community, you allow them to do that. You build people. I'm really big about building new kids that are coming from school and they want to have their own farms. We need to do that. We need to make sure that others take care of the land. We take care of the land now, but we prepare them to take it over. We're no spring chickens, right? We're gonna adios amigos. So whatever we do, it will have a big impact in future generations. I want to leave it open because I want you to ask lots of questions, not only for me, but for them, because there's so much to talk about. But please stay involved. These are excellent meetings. I wish I would see a couple of brown growers that are very successful in our communities, but they don't participate. But I'm sure if you guys stop buying their things, they'll probably start participating.
We'll do a brief, we have to be out by 5, but we got about time for about 15 minutes or so of questions, and brief statements are okay. Please no long speeches. I'll just try to moderate this by hand. Any questions? And we'll start this way, we'll go that way. So any questions for any of the speakers? And since we're not using the mic, you can just answer it there. First question here.
I don't know which of you would be able to answer this question, but I live right past the fairgrounds. It's huge fields, they're doing the hoops, and they're getting ready. I don't know if they sprayed, I see the plastic there, and there was a lot of dust generated prior to planting, like about 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. And I wonder if the dust, how could I collect the dust and determine if there's pesticides in the dust? I heard somebody mention.
I'm going to try to repeat the question for the room. You live just up by the fairgrounds?
Yes.
And you saw some hoops and some dust, and you're wondering about this pesticides in the dust that's going around?
Yeah, how could I measure the dust
How do you
that comes
find
into
out?
my house?
Does anybody know the answer to that question? How to find out?
Well, I'll tell you what's going on is they're planting blackberries, raspberries, or something. That's normally what they do, and they do fumigate the soil in a way that they put plastic, right, and they inject whatever it is. We don't do that, we're organic, but at any given time that you have a concern, you as a citizen, as a member of the community, you can call the ag commissioner and say, I want to know what they're fumigating. It's an open book. You're entitled to Make the phone call and they'll tell you what they're doing, because that grower needs to notify them. They know what's going on, and so should you.
Next question. The back?
One of the great joys that I've had in my first year as being a Cabrillo trustee was to visit our horticulture program. I did not realize we were growing organic, hydroponic, butter lettuce, and Persian cucumbers. When I got a chance to try them, and I was assured that the water they're using is perfectly organic and free of chemicals that are harmful. I was quite shocked by the flavor. I mean, I've eaten butter lettuce before from Safeway and other supermarkets, Persian cucumbers, and I was amazed at the difference. So I want any of the speakers, is it not true that all organic produce decidedly has a different flavor from that which has been grown with pesticides?
Question, are organic products have a better, different, decidedly better flavor?
Without a doubt, it's a no-brainer. Even if it's probably hydroponic,
Well,
which I don't probably agree so much that it shouldn't. There's no soil, so it shouldn't really be organic. It should be just growing hydroponically. But that's a whole different issue. When you farm organically, you are letting Mother Nature take its course. Therefore, your strawberries or your cucumbers or your tomatoes will take a lot longer for them to go through their cycle, and they'll have the nutrients and the taste that it's absolutely completely different than what your conventional tomatoes or strawberries.
Thank you.
Next question, Takashi.
Hi, my name is Takashi.
Oh, 1 second, Takashi.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I just want to add that the freshness definitely makes a big difference, so if those lettuces and cucumbers came right off the vine or right out of the bed, they're going to taste better than your organic produce that has been sitting.
Freshness counts. Freshness counts.
Yes, indeed.
Takashi.
Yeah, I'm Takashi, I'm a community member, and I'm a friend with Joji from NIOSH. And I have a question, Mr. Javier and Joji Muramoto-san, about the current problem situation of organic food for school children. Because I was recently really shocked to learn about the situation of PBSD students. 85%, more than 80% of the students are from the family with poverty. More than 80%. And also about 15% of students, they need special education, special education assistance. And I helped my daughter who taught TK and kinder in one of the schools here. I almost helped every day the students and teachers and parents. And I counted the number of the kids who came early to the school to have breakfast at school. Almost 100 students every morning. And they had breakfast and lunch at school. They couldn't afford. And I really appreciate if you could share the information, present situation of the organic food for school children.
Question about the presence of, what's the link between organic farm, food in the school, PBUSD in particular, any school?
I'll take 2 minutes and I'll tell you. So we always talk about the negative and all the stuff. The Pajaro Valley Unified School District is actually feeding and trying to source organic food heavily from our area for the kids. The last 4 years, I'm really honored and blessed that the Manto made all the strawberries that were fed to the kids came from my farm, the Manto made. Wow. JSM organic strawberries. Why do, but that's because there's people that are really good in the community, and they have to make sure that, number one, that the dollars that taxpayers contribute to our kids get back to the community. And if they can buy from a smaller grower in the community, that's excellent. That's what sustainability should be. Instead of going to San Francisco, LA, and the district buy-in from those guys where the strawberries are actually grown. And this season, actually, the butternut squash, the kids are actually being fed butternut soup out of my butternuts that were grown 15 minutes or 6 miles away from the kids. That's excellent. That's community power, and that's what we have if we get together.
I'm gonna keep going.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, I'll go there, then there. We'll get you both, don't worry. Yeah.
Hi, I have a couple questions regarding how do more conventional farmers become organic, especially in the area. But I think, what about the tremendous pressure for us to take farmland and develop it? That's what I'm really worried about, where a lot of our local small farmers will be pressured into developing it into strip malls and other areas. And I know I don't want it to look like San Jose or LA or Sacramento or other communities. How do we address that to keep the organic farmers going?
Let me answer the second part of your question first, and Joji, there's a question about the process of transitioning from conventional to organic. What's that process like? The second part of the question, protecting farmland, there is a campaign right now. I'm involved with it. It's a campaign to renew Watsonville's urban limit line. Many leaders are here. Sam Earnshaw is here. He's been a big leader in organic farming in our region. To give Watsonville voters the power and the opportunity to renew the urban limit line next year on the ballot. And we're just getting the signatures. There's enormous pressure to annex farmland, pave it over. I don't know how many more Starbucks Watsonville needs. And there's developers that want to build $100,000 homes that none of us can afford here, where the median income is around $55,000. So this petition is tremendously popular with our community across the board in every neighborhood. So I think the future bodes well to understand that we need to eat and we need to protect farmland here in the Pajaro Valley. Improving that farm. Sam, do you want to add anything real quick? Tell the website. Website, watsonvilleplannedgrowth.org. That's for this, and I know while the whole region wants to support it, it's only the city of Watsonville voters who are going to be able to decide it. And that campaign will go for the next year. And then how to improve the farming to make it more sustainable and healthy during the process of transition from conventional to organic. What's that?
Yeah, this transition process takes 3 years without using chemicals.
Please take your mask off so we can hear you better. Thank you.
Yeah, the organic standard requires 3 years the field without using synthetic chemicals, chemical fertilizer. That's
Okay, next question. Oh, here.
I, as someone who's also tracking climate very closely, and then we've had a lot of, negative pressures on migrants coming up and working, and, there's just been a lot of intensity around all these issues. There's a sense of urgency, and so I'm wondering I know that Driscoll's is down here and other major corporations, what is the relationship with these corporations to organic farming, do they farm? Do they lease the land to others who farm? And what kind, is that something to look at or not, or what? Thank you.
Yeah, Driscoll's are very comprehensive. They don't grow strawberries. They contract with the farmers, and they just provide resources like plantings, and then buy all the strawberries and sell it. So they are a vertical integrated company. And then they, at least for local here, they're very trying to make it organic as much as possible. So they are very actually good collaborator for developing anaerobic soil disinfestation, I mentioned. And then, locally, they, at least as far as I know, we're working together to make more organic.
Follow-up question, do Driscoll's growers decide if they want to farm organically, or does just Driscoll's decide themselves who gets to farm organically or not?
That's a good question.
Any other things to add to that? Another question? Any other question? Yeah, question here.
So I'm quite new to this whole I'm quite new to this whole theme of agriculture, but since it is regarding Watsonville.
I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
So because I'm quite new to the whole conversation of agriculture and pesticides, and because it does involve Watsonville, it does concern me very much for my future and, you know, my generation and the well-being. With all this research being shown, can't the city partake in enforcing, you know, big corporations like Driscoll's to turn to more organic or less harmful pesticides, or what will that look for? What is their willingness to do so?
Great question. I'll repeat the question. How can the city pressure, encourage or require organic farming, getting rid of the toxic pesticides? That is something exactly what CORA wants to help figure out. Obviously, we would love to see this done voluntarily. We would love to see all the conventional growers say, yes, we want to improve this and do it on their own. But that might not happen, but we would love it to happen. The current state law, 30 years ago, Mendocino and Sonoma County were having enormous success fighting pesticides, and we're banning it at a local level. The state DPR decided to take it away from local counties, and currently local counties do not even have the ability to regulate pesticides. There's a state law preempting it. And so this is going to be a long-term effort to undo that, reverse that, but in order for that to happen, we need to make this a much bigger issue. So it's a city issue, it's also a county issue. And so because it's a county issue, it's not only a Pajaro Valley issue. Everybody in the county, in the region, the Pajaro Valley also encompasses Monterey County as well. This needs to be a regional issue, a regional effort. So this is the start. So please make sure you sign up on our petitions, because we're going to get into that in the campaigns and addressing that. Because it's not just the county supervisors we're going to need to talk to, we're also going to need to talk to our state assembly members and our state senators. But everybody's going to need to hear about this.
So the follow-up of that, have you had any corporations so far that are interested in doing so? And if you have you thought about any ideas like holding workshops to show them how to turn into organic farming?
Question, how can we work cooperatively with growers and to help them transition organic? So there's an example, I think the example across the levee from the Bay Village, the senior community, where they're spraying malathion on the raspberries. I know there's been some correspondence with the grower. Do you want to summarize that?
Yeah, well, when they sprayed malathion on the fields behind our houses, we had an agreement with the growers that they would notify us when they were going to spray. But they just said, well, we're going to spray. And then it was like, well, why are we going to spray? People were upset when they found out that it was malathion. So our homeowners association actually sent a letter to the grower asking if he could stop using malathion. But we don't really have any authority to do that. It's just kind of creating goodwill. And I know that around the schools there have been issues with pesticide exposure on the school grounds, and some of those fields have actually, like the one across from Maloney and the one behind McQuitty and out by Bradley, I think to avoid hassles, some of those farmers and orchardists have converted to organic. So it's developing those relationships, and then just for the farmers to recognize they can have a brand, they can have good community relationships, they can make more money if they convert to organic, but they also need those incentive dollars. And the state of California is starting to invest more in those incentives for people to convert both to healthy soils and to organic, or reduce their chemicals. So it's a political issue and it's a neighborhood issue as well.
Thank you, Kat. Running out of time. Any final questions, thoughts? Delmar?
Well, I can just add, it may seem far away and remote, but there's a second smallest state in India. It's called Sikkim, S-I-K-K-I-M, that from 2003, I believe, to 2016, went 100% organic, and they are now successfully, for the last 5-6 years, organic. They did have prison sentences and fines for those who did not eventually get in line. But they had what is that, a 12-13 year lead time to really get everyone there. And I just thought, so it's not unheard of that it can happen, even at a state level. That would be equivalent of Delaware, more or less, in the United States. So I just wanted to, if someone had the comment question, how do we move in that direction? It may take a little, the other thing is just education. Pesticides are just, it's like, there's a message being sent and you're always killing the messenger. That's what a pest is, and you never address the problem. So the doctor over there addressed nitrates and all that. I mean, addressing fertility, conditions for growth. That's the new agriculture. That's really not new at all. But and this idea that we have to kill everything that's on our land that's bad is just, it's Neanderthalic. I'm sorry if I'm offending people, but I'm in the industry, so I know my stuff, and I've had to deal with it myself. So we have to move forward. The science is already there. It's been there for a long time. It's getting better and better. So just education, and unfortunately, it has to do with money.
Yeah.
You know, if you can show a bottom line increase to Driscoll's or anyone, it's going to be adopted right away. So that's it.
We have to go. If you want to carry the conversation outside on the beautiful deck, we can carry the conversation. We have to be out. Thank you so much for coming. I wanted to just